Thank you, Heather and panel. That was fantastic. Do we agree? All right, all right. We're getting into some processing and harvesting and really some good food for thought. So, in looking at our Centennial Summit here in Abuja, we sort of wanted the framing around realizing the potential of African agriculture. We were very intentional about that, and we wanted to look at catalytic innovations that were occurring across the agricultural value chain. But if Rockefeller sort of looked at our own projects, that wasn't going to be very broad-based, things that we were funding. So we were deliberate and bringing together a group of outside individuals who would really do some thorough research on this issue of catalytic innovations for growth in the African agricultural sector. So we engaged Oxfam America, to undertake a scan of these promising innovations. And we were really deliberate in what was happening now, what's occurring right now. The framing around promising and proven was important because we were intentional. We wanted to see things that could be taken to scale, whether it was through further public support, private sector support, or civil society. And we also asked them to focus specifically on challenges. What are some of the challenges that that these innovations were facing? So now, what I want to do is bring out the Oxfam team that led this research and study and scanning around these catalytic innovations, and they're going to share with you some of their process and the procedure that they undertook in conducting this work for us, and all the information that you found in your packets. So to my immediate right, it's Paul O'Brien, Vice President for Policy and Campaigns. In the center, women in the center of everything on this issue, is Kimberly Pfeiffer, the Head of Research. And to my far right is David Satterswaite, the Deputy Director of Private Sector at Oxfam America. So Paul, Kimberly, and David, the stage is yours.
Hello? Yes, thanks, CD. And thank you to Rockefeller and to all of you who've participated. I think many of us have rotated through this stage over the last few days, but it's the last day. It's been fascinating. I absolutely loved yesterday. We've been buzzing about it because of the people you brought on stage and the conversations they had. And I'll say a few words around why and Oxfam's approach, how we got to these innovations that we helped Rockefeller select, and why we think, what we think it's going to take to get them to scale. So why? Why was yesterday so powerful for us? And what is the Oxfam approach? At Oxfam, we like to talk about power. We like to talk about how power can fuel great ideas, about how the wrong kinds of power can kill good ideas, how innovation happens, yes, when you have a good idea, but when you also have the right alignment of incentives so that corporations will use their power in the right ways, and also when there's the right kind of political will or institutional strength that creates that space in which innovation happens. So you can tell why perhaps yesterday was such a buzz for us. We saw precisely that happening. We saw corporations talk about how their incentives are starting to align with smallholder farmers and sustainable agriculture. And we saw fabulous debate between politicians around what it takes to create that space. And it was the debate, the actual difference of opinion and the civility of it, and the desire to find common ground that was so exciting to us. So kudos for creating that space. But let me take you from that to the way we think about it as Oxfam in a slightly more structured way. We spend a lot of time at Oxfam talking about a power triangle, about a way of thinking about institutions. And when you think about power, you sort of think about two things all the time. You think about where did the institution get its power from, and how do they want to use it? You're constantly asking those questions. So for us, who are we? We are an institution that got its power privately. Nobody gave us a mandate. Nobody gave us any legitimacy. We only exist to the extent that we can use our private mandate, just like the Rockefeller Foundation, for public good. It's when we get that right, both Oxfam and Rockefeller, that we're useful in this world. But what both institutions, I think, have increasingly recognized is that private institutions that want to exercise public power have to do, if they want to see great innovations get to scale, is they have to be deeply influential with the other two types of power institutions. Private institutions that want to exercise private purpose, as in profit, as in corporations. Our ability as civil society organizations to shape the agendas of corporations is profoundly important to our relevance. And secondly, public institutions that have a public purpose, which of course is the state and governments. That is why so many of us are thinking about what is it going to take for us if we want to create the space for innovation to influence corporations on the one hand and governments on the other. And just one observation I want to make about yesterday that really came home to me. The fascinating thing that Oxfam has found in the last few years is that, to put it in somewhat blunt ways, every corporation has a Minister of Finance and a Minister of Agriculture in constant debate with each other. You have somebody in the corporation who's thinking about today's bottom line, making sure that they remain profitable now. And you have somebody in the corporation who's trying to lay the seeds for future profitability and who's willing to take some costs. And they are in tension with each other. Oxfam is at its best when we help those who are thinking about long-term sustainable profitability being tied to development to win out in the constant debates that are happening within corporations. They're legitimate debates. The same thing is happening within governments. We have no possibility of success in influencing governments when they are uniformly opposed to the kind of smallholder innovation that we care about. But when we see that split in governments, when we see a healthy debate between a Minister of Agriculture who's saying smallholder farmers can drive our economic growth on the one hand, and you see somebody on the other hand who's saying, no, let's focus really on our extractives, on our natural resources, and on making profits today. When you see that debate, and you're an organization like Oxfam, and perhaps even Rockefeller, you want to make sure it's a healthy and robust debate that is far-sighted enough. And it is that challenge that we face as an institution, and perhaps the Rockefeller Foundation does too, to understand first, and then to influence and shape the dynamics of debate within corporations and within governments to make sure that the space is created for innovation that matters. So, what are innovations? They are the things that happen when great ideas, incentives, and political will all align. And what Rockefeller asked us to do was to take the first step in that journey, find some great ideas. We said we'd come back to them with some thoughts, and Kimberly and David are going to talk to you about the ideas that they found. But let me be clear, none of us at Oxfam, and I don't think at Rockefeller, are under any illusions that these ideas are going to get to scale without the other two things happening. And so we're going to spend an awful lot of time over the next few years championing these ideas, not just as great ideas, but as fulfilling certain types of incentives for certain types of corporations and being aligned with the political will and desires of the states in which we hope those innovations come to thrive. And that's where we think, in the end of the day, the power triangle is a useful way to be relevant to smallholder farmers. Okay, so with that, Kimberly, I think you were going to talk us through how we came up with the 8 innovations that we worked on with Rockefeller.
Great, yeah. So I'm one of those eggheads that the Minister of Agriculture mentioned yesterday. So bear with me. I'll get us started and then turn over to David, who will enliven things a bit for us. So the triangle that Paul just spoke about, that's important and at the center of Oxfam's work, also is a great tool to map over thinking about the value chain when you're talking about agricultural production. The value chain allows you to think about agriculture from input to product, end product for the consumer, right? And what is important along that value chain are these relationships that Paul just laid out and how they play out at each level of that value chain. So with that as a starting point, we went to some colleagues of ours at Duke University at the Center for Globalization, Competitiveness, and Governance. And we asked them to join us on producing some materials on and the scan of what are some promising innovations happening out there now in Africa along agricultural value chains. And it's a big task. As we heard Mamadou Bite say yesterday, there are hundreds of innovations out there, and we just need to find them or search for them. So we started that search with Duke, and we started as broad as we could, but to very quickly get down to a few just to highlight what are some promising things happening, and what are some challenges that they face, and how would then that spur a conversation between those different actors on the triangle for how you get that promising innovation replicated, shared, and happening in other places and going to scale. And we started by first just saying the smallholder farmer is at the center of this scan. I believe that's why Rockefeller Foundation came to us. The smallholder farmer is at the center of our work at Oxfam. We care about empowering smallholder farmers. We've been working on this for decades. And so that's where we started. So in looking across these innovations, we had to first say what has at its mission or an objective is to benefit smallholder farmers. That takes us down to be able to look at a few other things. Then we tried to get some diversity in terms of regional diversity of the innovations happening. We looked at product diversity along the value chain. We focused somewhat on finance, knowing that is an important issue that Rockefeller Foundation wanted to highlight for us. And then we also focused on getting some variety in terms of types of innovations. So whether they are product innovations, market innovations, organizational innovations. And then that got our pool down to about 40 or so innovations. And then we did another assessment of them, thinking about things like how it really does address improved well-being. How does it address issues of environmental and social sustainability? The potential for it to be is it economically viable? The potential for scalability and replicability. And so then we got it down to about 14 innovations. And our colleagues at Duke were again able to then assess these four a little deeper, looking at these issues: improved well-being, equity issues, social sustainability, environmental sustainability. And we were able, as Oxfam, to join them and go and visit with each of these 14 innovations on the ground, speak with a variety of stakeholders involved, and hear what is making this an exciting initiative. We thought of these as innovation initiatives. What is making this exciting? What is energizing this to have some real potential in benefiting smallholders? But what are some of the challenges that you're also facing? And from that, we produced the materials for these 8 innovations. You've seen some of the videos. So, David?
Wonderful. Thank you all. You know, we're lucky enough today to have representatives from the innovations here with us. Would you mind standing up if you're coming from one of the innovations so people can know who you are? I see the gentleman from Olam here, sir. Here we are. There are others, I believe? Good. And what is your innovation, sir, that you're from? From WASP, from the seed. Good. And we know the folks from DATCO, wonderful presentation. Thank you the other day. And then from Olam, Rice Nucleus. Thank you, sir. As well from Rice Nucleus. Just wanted to, and then Christina from the Rural Resilience Initiative, R4. Wanted you to see those faces so that you can engage and have discussions. We don't have much time now to discuss the particular innovations, but here are people who are taking them forward among you. And we're very lucky and we're thankful as well to Rockefeller that they were able to bring these representatives to the event. So please engage them and discuss with them. And there'll be plenty of time for that during the day. And thank you all very much for coming and joining us here. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Paul to wrap up.
Just one last comment before we leave the stage. You've seen one side of Oxfam's work to support smallholder farmers by looking for some of these innovations. But no organization that claims to be serious about power and thinking about power shies away from the question, what if the key constraint to smallholder agriculture is the misuse of power? And so, just to give you an example of that, when we look across the food value chain from the large input companies to the trading companies to the big brands like Coca-Cola and Nestle and so on, to the retailers like Walmart and Costco, we ask the question, what are they doing or failing to do which needs to change in order to make space for smallholder farmers? So we spend at least as much time as Oxfam, if not significantly more, campaigning to challenge these corporations to strengthen their practices to create that space. If you go to a website now called www.behindthebrands.org, you will see how Oxfam is challenging the 10 major food brands to engage in a race to the top with each other, to change their practices to be more focused on leaving benefit for smallholder farmers. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we challenged all of them to put on their websites to declare what were going to be their policies to make sure that throughout their value chain, in the cocoa industry, they benefited women smallholder farmers. Declare what your policies are, put on your websites a plan for implementing those policies, and then tell us when you're going to measure the impact that you've actually had for smallholder women farmers. We challenged 3 companies to do that, Nestle, Monsanto, and Mars. And within 8 weeks, this is the great thing about working with the private sector, within 8 weeks, all 3 companies had put those declarations on their websites, met with us and said, thank you for doing that, because to turn a full circle, they were having just those debates inside their corporations. Why can't we do more to help the smallholder women farmers? If we have to triple cocoa yields over the next few years because we're facing a 1 million ton deficit every year and China and India are increasingly buying cocoa, why can't we do more to help smallholder women farmers triple their production yields, said one side of those corporations. The others, we can't afford to strengthen all these smallholder women farmers. We've got profits to make. Well, we, as a campaigning organization, weighed in on the side of the former group and thankfully gave them that little bit of extra muscle so that they were able to get their CEOs to declare this is going to be our policy going forward. So just to say, there's plenty of times when the best thing we can do with corporations is capture their imaginations, but there are other times when we civil society actors don't need to capture their imaginations, but to remind them that they are being held accountable and that their customers and consumers are increasingly going to be asking, as I eat this chocolate or buy this food product, am I also doing a good thing in the world? And that is incredible power to bring to bear as we try to align the incentives of corporations. So thank you for giving me the chance to share that side of creating space for innovation as well. And CD, thank you for the opportunity for Oxfam to be with this great group of people. It's been a privilege.
No, to be honest, thank you, Paul, for your leadership, Kimberly, for your egg-headedness, because you really helped us go home and really drill down on the innovation, and David, obviously, for your support in leading this project. Let's give them a round of applause, everyone, please. I'm glad that David had those representatives from the various innovations that we've highlighted. I'm glad that you pointed them out, and that's very important. And also, I just wanted to point out in all of your packets, you got case studies on these innovations, and if you didn't get them, they will be on our website, because we really want to share this information to highlight the process and as well as the actual initiative. So that's very important to us. Thanks, guys. So now I'm gonna bring back up Michael Myers, who's gonna walk us through the next section of the program for today.
Thank you, CD. Good morning, everyone. The next segment of our program is for you. Well, all of this is for you, but we have our breakout discussions. We want to try to keep these groups as small as possible, so let me make some suggestions about how we proceed forward for the remainder of the morning. First off, from yesterday, we learned that we should be viewing agriculture very much as a business, that we should be looking at the financial possibilities that can enhance the growth of agriculture across Africa. So we should approach our breakout discussions with that perspective in mind, that we're looking at agriculture in that light. In the breakouts, we want to address one question. So if you could be thinking about that question as you go into these discussions. How do we overcome constraints and take innovations to scale? So how do we overcome constraints and take innovations to scale? We want to come out of these breakout discussions with concrete ideas. We'll make a list of concrete ideas for how we overcome constraints and take innovations to scale. Our hope as the Rockefeller Foundation is that we can emerge from this morning's discussion with at least 10 solid, actionable ideas for how we overcome constraints and take innovations to scale. These 10 ideas will inform the strategies not only of the Rockefeller Foundation going forward for our next 100 years, but also we will publicize them widely, so that we can influence the other actors in this space. We also intend to use them in other meetings that we have in the future with stakeholders, with influencers, with policymakers, so that the ideas that emerge from your discussions over the next hour or two will have a real impact beyond the activities of this single day. So that is the thrust of the breakout discussions and what we ask you to do in those discussions. We will have 4 groups and we have a great turnout this morning, which is wonderful. We'll try to limit them as much as we can to around 15 people per group so that we have a good discussion around that topic of how we overcome constraints and take innovations to scale. So let me give you a little bit of the mechanics and the logistics of that. One room is upstairs on this side of the building, so that is one group. Another one is just out the door here to my left. You'll see it if you step outside, so that's breakout number 2. One group will remain in this room, number 3, and then we have a 4th breakout group that will be conducted in French, en français. And that is in a room just behind, you see the art over here? It's in a room just behind that wall. So that one will be in French. So 4 breakout groups for this discussion. Now, a question I must pose to you to get your permission that we may need to run a little bit overtime this morning because we got started a little bit late. And I just want to make sure that that's okay with everyone in the room if we end up going to lunch, say 15 minutes later than we had scheduled. Is that all right if we need to go a little bit overtime? Because I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for the discussions in the breakout sessions so that we get the full benefit of your thinking before we conclude our summit. So if we have to, is it all right if we add about 15 minutes to the schedule today? Is that, get a general sense? I see nods that that's all right. So we may have to do that. So now we'll take a 10-minute break or less if we can. We would like to begin the breakout sessions as close to 10:30 as possible, and then we'll run those until about noon today. After that, we will come back here for a report from the breakout sessions, and we will get a chance to discuss for a few minutes at least the findings or the recommendations of those breakout sessions before we join each other for lunch. So let's take a short break, coffee, tea, and then you decide which of those rooms you wish to go to. If one room is getting full, I warn you, we will close the door and direct you to another one so we have a balance of representation across the four groups. Is everything clear? Do we have any questions that I need to answer before we go take our break? And then 10:30, try to make it to the rooms by 10:30. Any questions? All right, thank you.